there you are. Hello. I've been wondering where you've been. We've all been wondering where you've been. And now you're here. Welcome. It's another edition of the Coaching Hour podcast, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to the panel who'll be joining us once again today. My name is Paul Rotherham, and of course, you know by now that this podcast is brought to you in proud partnership with Coaches Network South Africa. Lovely to be back with you after not being available for the last edition. I was in Cape Town. Shock, horror. What a terrible place to be. Had a wonderful time, but now I'm back in Benoni. And let me tell you this, there's nothing like home, hey? Crazy. We go around the world, we enjoy things, but nothing beats being at home. Home is where we are when we have Marika and Mary on the show, and we do have both of those lovely ladies today, so I'm going to say hello to them. Hello, girls.
Hi there.
Nice to have you with us.
Hello.
Remember, you both have speaking roles, so you have to talk. Good to have you with us. We're going to introduce you to today's guest, who'll be joining us for the next 30, 40 minutes or so, as we bring you, hopefully, what you find to be another insightful topic. Don't forget, we do welcome your comments. And if you are in the coaching space and you would like to feature in this podcast, then please let Marika know. We're always looking for excited and exciting guests to come and join us and share their coaching experiences with everyone. Because it is a big community and a community that is growing, the coaching space here in South Africa, and largely thanks to Coaches Network South Africa. So Marika, who's joining us today?
Thank you, Paul. Yes, we have Melanie Koch with us today. She's a registered psychometrist and career coach. And today we're going to talk about a very important topic. I think because, the teenagers of today, they struggle, with their decision making, and that's why we're going to talk about discovery precedes decision making. So welcome, Melanie. It's so nice to have you with us on the Coaching Hour today. And we've been greatly introduced by Paul this morning as well. But tell us a bit more about Melanie. So why are you passionate, about this, specific career choice that you have?
Thanks, Marika. Thanks for the introduction. So firstly, I think part of my passion stems from, having been in the corporate space for many, many years, and then much later in life, making quite a big career change myself, studying psychology later in life, and then leaving the corporate world to register as a psychometrist and pursue a career in coaching. And added to that, I also have teenage children who are going through the whole career decision-making process. So I kind of know firsthand what that is like. And I can really, resonate with parents that are struggling with this decision-making process and how difficult it is for their children. A lot of children out there have aspirations, they need to make these choices, and there are so many choices. But to actually get to the decision-making process is the hard part. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think dealing with younger adults is fun. It's very rewarding. I think that's not where it ends, though. There are a lot of people mid-career that are struggling and are unhappy. I had a client the other day, a 30-year-old attorney phoned me and said, I'm hating my career in law. Is it too late? And of course it isn't. It's never too late to change your career. So that's where I find fulfillment, because, running the psychometric assessments, doing the coaching with people, and as they start to discover themselves, it becomes easy for them to make decisions to take another route.
What's better, hating your career in law or disliking your mother-in-law? I have to say that because Mary is part of our team, and Mary, for those of you who may not have known, is indeed my mother-in-law. So it's a bit of an in-joke there. Before you jump in, and I'm sure Marika and Mary have lots of questions, I don't want to dominate the conversation, but can you just define what a psychometrist is and what you do exactly? Because we all know what a psychologist is and what psychiatrists do, but how does psychometry differ?
So a psychometrist is someone who's done an honors degree in psychology, and you are registered with the Health Professions Council of South Africa to administer psychometric assessments. So those can vary from assessments in the career, in the workplace, where it comes to recruitment, etc. I also, funny enough, was in Cape Town myself last week, conducting assessments for attorneys as part of the Road Accident Fund. So psychometric testing is very important there as well, to measure cognitive decline where there's been a head injury, etc. And then, of course, assessments in the career decision making. So from grade 9, you have children who need to make subject choices. So to do that, we need to measure aptitude. Do they have what it takes? Do they have the potential or the propensity to excel in certain areas of competence? Then we have your personality assessments, which measures, the character traits of a person. So will they be, suited to a certain career based on their personality profile? So you could have somebody who's an extreme introvert, doesn't really like working with people. So sales, probably not such a good idea. And obviously the opposite is true as well. Somebody who's a raging extrovert is going to be very bored in perhaps an accounting career. And then obviously we look at interests. So measuring a person's interests is important because you might be very good at something, but you might not be very interested in it. And then lastly, values. Values assessments are essential because quite often if our values conflict or aren't congruent with the type of work we do, we're not going to be fulfilled. So but money is very important to you and you go and work for an NGO, you're probably going to be quite frustrated. And if it's in conflict with your religion or whatever it is that's of value to you, it's important to us to measure that. And then at the end, what we do is we integrate all those results. So the findings from all those different assessments need to be integrated to give a holistic picture and hopefully also a very realistic picture, because sometimes young adults have very unrealistic views of what their careers might look like. They also have very limited views. So they might think, well, I like the idea of being a chiropractor. Well, I like the idea, but they've never really spent time or researched those. So that's why the decision-making process is so important, and understanding yourself as a person. What are my personality traits? What's important to me? And what am I really interested in? Or are my decisions so influenced by my peer group or my parents or my educators? So it's important that I kind of look at it a 3-step process. Like we have these aspirations of all these things that are out there. And then we need to come to the part where we start looking at what are my solutions? What are the choices or the options that are out there? And then lastly, how do I narrow those down into realistic, viable options that are perhaps lucrative for me if that's important? And then finally, make a decision, which essentially is an act of will. We need to actually take that bold step. And I think a lot of the time, career indecision by itself is not necessarily a bad thing, if you can sit with it and work through it. But sometimes not making a decision is also making a decision to sort of go, oh, I'll just agonize over it, or I'll just, delay it. And that's why a lot of people are very averse to gap years. And I'm quite in favor of it if it means that it's a very structured gap year and that you've got specific goals in mind, because that allows you time to reflect and to develop your self-awareness. It allows you to, go and do shadow work, go and volunteer, see what you like, and see who you are as a person, how you function in a work environment.
As a dad of 2, just to jump in, I can say, and I'm sure Marika and Mary feel the same because they've also had children, I don't think sufficient guidance and direction is given here. I have a son who's now living in Ireland. He's 21, and only recently did he discover the knack for the industry that he's now getting into. He's getting into welding, and it turns out he is incredibly proficient at it. He's been top of his class, doing very, very well, when in all honesty, he wasn't even able to finish matric here before he left. He just sort of bumbled his way through school, barely making it. Teachers were advising us that we should have held him back a year, which never happened, potentially even 2 years. But ultimately, I do think there's a huge gap. And I don't know if today's the place for talking about that, but it would be so interesting to know what the dropout stats are of people who embark on these degrees and diplomas and courses and end up doing things that are completely different. My experience with my children, Jess has just finished matric. She's doing civil, and she's loved that for the last couple of years. So she's lucky. She knows what she likes. She's made a decision and she's going for it. Whether she'll still be doing it in 5 years, 10 years, who knows? But it would be interesting to know from you what that landscape looks like at the moment for youngsters.
Well, quite honestly, I think it has improved since we were in school. So when we were in school, there wasn't a subject called life orientation. I think we used to have guidance, but that was like maybe once a term. And now there's a subject, and a large component of that syllabus includes career guidance. But to be honest, I don't think that the children take it so seriously. I think it is taught. And often, if I want to go and approach a school, it's better for me to address the parents because they're much more vested in their children's futures than what the kids are. I think they're just too young. When they think of university, they think of fun. They don't necessarily think of their futures. I mean, there are the select few that are very focused and they know when they're in grade 8 that they want to be a doctor or whatever it is, but that's very much the minority. I was giving guidance to a young girl the other day who's out of school and she says she wants to be an architect. And when I gave her the options, because she had dropped maths, so the options were limited. But there is an opportunity to go to a technical university. But she says, but no, I want to go to UCT. So it wasn't so much that she wants to be an architect, it's so much that she wants to go to Cape Town and have a job. So it's very important. I mean, sometimes I think, there is so much indecision and it's very difficult for them to know at a young age, particularly if they haven't gone through an assessment process or some kind of coaching. But what is important is to actually get them onto some path, because some people don't have the luxury of choice. They perhaps don't have the luxury of being able to go to tertiary institutions. Perhaps they have to go and work. Perhaps they can't afford to finish school. And in such cases, they can still get some guidance around, okay, so let's just get you on some path where there is a measure of interest for you and where it is suited to you as a person. So yes, the landscape, I wouldn't say it's bleak, but I think that youngsters need to actually take a lot more initiative for themselves. They need to take responsibility for their careers. Having been in corporate for a long time and working in learning and development, working in recruitment, often I'd have people come to me and go, oh, what's the company's career plan for me? And what training are you putting me on this year? And actually, what do you want to do? What is your career goals? It's really you must own it. Take accountability for your career. Just as young people need to go and seek that guidance, go and see where you can shadow. If you have a slight interest in a certain career, find out where you can go and learn more about it. Interview people, go onto LinkedIn and see, are there jobs in that career? And what are the attributes they're looking for? What are the competencies they're looking for? And do I possess those? And how do I go about empowering myself? So I hope that answers your question, Paul.
So, Melanie, I quickly want to go back to what you mentioned in terms of the gap year, because that is something, my son is going to high school next year. And obviously, then the year after, he will also have to start making his choices and subjects, which we can touch on also. But that gap year that you've mentioned, a few people, like you said, is against it and feel they have to immediately go into their studies because just in case, something happens and they lose interest or whatever that might be. But I like the way that you've actually expressed it, that it must be structured. I think a lot of kids maybe see that gap year as a year to now chill and relax, and how would such a structured year look like? Where would one start?
So just to preface it with the fact that, most parents, it's a very controversial thing. So they don't want their kids lying around and it doesn't look good for them because what is your child doing? Nothing. So they don't like the sound of it, or they think it's going to waste their money or their time. But the thing is, there's a lot more money to be wasted sending your child to some private college or wherever because they didn't get into university and paying like 160,000 rands a year, and they're going to drop out after 1 year. And it happens so often, and it's very wasteful. So I would say, when I've worked with younger people on structuring their gap years and kind of having to position it to their parents, I kind of say to them, well, what are the things that you want to achieve out of this year? So asking them, not what your parents want to achieve, what would you like to be able to do by the end of the year? And typically it's, well, I want to do a bit of travel. Okay, so how are you going to afford this travel? Oh, well, maybe I need to get a job. Okay, so maybe for the first 3 months, try and get some work. Maybe for the next 3 months, we can do some volunteering. Or maybe that volunteering can happen somewhere where you are traveling so that you're actually earning money or getting experience while you actually see in a different place. And we break it up. So maybe we use like the school system where there's 4 terms, and actually, what are you going to do in the 3rd term? Okay, well, now I'm really going to start researching institutions and looking at what I like because now I've got a better idea, and I'll start applying. And then in the 4th term, I want to maybe have a little bit of fun. but I also want to be able to get closure on some of the things that I set out to do. So, that's just an idea of what it can look like, but it would look different for everyone. But as long as there are clearly set objectives at the beginning of the year, and at the end of each quarter, you're kind of looking back, reflecting and measuring yourself against those, then it won't be a waste. Because I spoke to my doctor recently, and her husband's also a doctor, and their son wanted to be a lawyer. So, of course, off they sent him to law school because everybody was asking, what's he going to be doing next year? And after the first year of law school, he dropped out. And now he's having a gap year. So he might as well have had that gap year to start with, because he didn't enjoy law school. It wasn't for him. And, a gap year doesn't have to be a whole year. It can just be a gap 6 months or a gap something. And your gap year doesn't have to happen directly after school. It can happen after your studies. Because once you've studied, you might think, you know what, I need a break from all of this. I need a bit of sabbatical. Maybe I need to travel. Maybe I need to just get some work experience. But you don't have to dive straight into the corporate world and get those golden handcuffs. Maybe, so the gap year can happen really at any time. Most people just choose to do it. But obviously we need to differentiate between, well, is this just a cop-out, a delay tactic? But yeah, it requires a little bit of coaching and guidance.
Yeah, I think it is important, though, to do some research on what a career actually entails. I mean, like myself, for an example, I thought I wanted to go into psychology, and then I kind of got, the lecturers kind of talked us out of it to say that's so difficult and this and that. The second best option is behavioral sciences. That's more in the human resources kind of avenue. So I always thought that human resources is like helping people and psychology, and then to just find out that it's completely the opposite, not something that I would ever enjoy doing. So I think there is some value in exploring different career paths and really understanding what it means, because you have this idea. For example, law. I mean, you look at Suits, for example, and you watch that series and you think that's what it's going to be like. And the reality is completely opposite. But I
TV
guess
does tend to glamorize certain positions, especially law. Law is very glamorized on TV. And I think, and when you go about interviewing other people, interview more than one person. Because I think my son went and shadowed at 2 IT companies. The one IT company, the guy said to him, you don't actually need a degree. I earn more money than this guy that's sitting there that's got a degree. But that guy was much younger. And I said, that's one guy. And remember, if you want to ever go overseas, you're going to have a degree. So it's not that I want you to have one, but I know that you want to go and work overseas eventually. So, you've got to look at it from different angles and not just get one person's opinion on something and let that be your guide. Get as many different varying opinions. Interview people in different facets of law. There's so many different types of law that you can consider.
Exactly.
And which one do you think is going to work for you?
Melanie, I'd like to throw in something. Some of the young people are doing career paths to suit the parents. And that's part of the reason why they drop out. Don't you think that's the reason?
Definitely. I mean, Mary, I think more and more as I'm seeing some of the parents, they are a little bit more open-minded, and they will say to their child, it's their decision. But by far, a lot of the parents are, they're the ones holding the purse strings. They're the ones saying to them, there's no money in that field. So kind of steering their children away from their passions and not really helping them see, what are the other options out there. So it's all about making a decision very quickly. You're in grade 11 and you've got to do well, because those marks are going to count towards university marks. Who's to say they want to go to university or want to go now? So it is very important not to push your own desires, because quite often those parents didn't get to go to university. So they really got a vested interest in their children doing what they didn't get to do. And, some careers, they feel that they want their child to follow in their footsteps or to take over the family business or whatever it is. And quite often the child's heart isn't in that. So I think parents need to be a little bit more open-minded. And, I think parents mean well, so they do think, well, I'm giving my child, I'm leaving my legacy, or I'm helping them, I'm just helping them. But as it is with coaching, you don't advise, you just guiding, just give them the tools to make, there's nothing wrong In fact, we should encourage young people to have as many opportunities as they can to experience decision making by themselves. And
Yes.
allow them to make mistakes, allow them just to make some decisions, because to make decisions for them is not a good idea. And, they're the ones that are going to have to go out and work every day and blame
Yes.
you because you made them.
My son he had a gap in 2 years actually. He's straight from school. He helped me with my real estate, and he sold houses himself. And then he left and he went, in England, that time there used to be that opportunity where the South Africans would go for 2 years and work.
Yes.
So he went, and then when he came back, he knew exactly what he wanted to do. And I mean, now he's established. He's doing exactly what he loves and earning money.
Fantastic. And that's what you need. I mean, that year spent overseas, or 2 years, just broadens your mind, and you get to meet with so many different people. It just opens up your mind to so many other avenues that are out there. And I mean, don't forget, many years, not that many years ago, but boys always had to go to the army for 2 years, or it was 1 year. So they had a forced gap year. They had an opportunity to really talk nonsense and meet other guys and speak about stuff, and they actually got off a little bit, to be able to not have to go straight into studying or straight into working like they do today.
Yeah.
That was me. Yeah,
And
national service, 1992, 1 year in the military. And I tell you, it's a conversation for another day, but what a difference that made to my life. It might not have been all roses. I mean, it was a tough year, but it opened up opportunities. It taught me, I think I learned more about myself in that 1 year than I'd learned in the previous 10 or 12 years. What I will say in my experience with people is I don't know very many people who really love what they do. I know people who put up with it, and I know people who do it because it's a decent sized paycheck at the end of the month. But I was blessed and fortunate, whatever you want to refer to it as, to literally have loved every minute of what I did for 15, 20 years of my life being in radio. And I always knew from the age of 9, that's what I wanted to do. And I was very fortunate. I got into commercial radio at a young age. And so I had a wonderful career. It would have been wonderful, even more so if I could have continued. But for various reasons in this country, that's difficult for somebody of my demographic. But needless to say, most people I speak to don't have a fond memory of their last 20 years. In most cases, it's been a slog and a struggle, and they hate getting up in the morning and going to work, and they literally live for home time when they can go and have a beer at the pub or get home or go and play a game of paddle. And to me, that's very sad, because you've got to provide and you have to earn a living, obviously, and get money. But the fact that so many people just seem to be unhappy with what they do to earn a living, that makes me quite sad. And then very sad.
I think quite often it's not so much the work they do. I think it's the environment that they're in. So, if they're working in a fairly toxic environment or environment that's not suited to them. I mean, a lot of young people say to me, oh, I don't want to be in a desk job. But many people end up there, whether they like it or not. That's kind of where they find themselves. But they're perhaps not in their ideal environment. I literally assessed a guy yesterday, very hands guy, very much can fix anything, can make things. He would be totally frustrated. I think his father owns quite a successful company, and he doesn't feel pressure to go and work there, but that opportunity exists. But he's determined to go and do something different. I think it was sound engineering or something. So, but he's definitely somebody that needs to be on site, actively busy in the field. I mean, my husband's an architect, and if you think of architecture, it's often on a computer drawing. But my husband prefers when he's on site, managing the build. That's where he comes alive. So I think if he didn't have that component, he'd be completely frustrated. I can actually tell when he's on the phone to me, whether he's on site or in the office, because, the energy just drains out of him if he's in front of a computer. And I think so often people just give up on their dreams for the sake of earning a living, because there's a lot of pressure to just go and make a living. And that's what I said at the beginning about the golden handcuffs. Now you have a bond, now you have a family, then you have a car. And it's all these things that make it so you feel so resentful about going to the office every day, because it's not what you ideally want to be doing. But if you have to ask those people, well, what would you prefer to be doing? They haven't really thought about it, so, it's up to you. You can change. You can leave it behind and maybe start a side hustle until it becomes successful and then do what you want to do. Then you don't have to sit in traffic every single day. So, I think what you're saying is true. There are a lot of people that don't like going to work, but there are a couple that really do. They, on the whole, probably give it a 7 out of 10, which isn't bad. It's above average. But again, I think the environment is key. Is it something that interests you? Do the people there, are they like-minded? Are they the type of people that you can work with? And if they aren't, there's nothing stopping you from trying to find something else. I mean, I know the job market isn't great, but it's not impossible.
I remember reading an article not so long ago. Oh, sorry, Mareka. I just wanted to say, I remember reading an article not so long ago where a huge percentage of the jobs that our children will be doing don't even exist yet. And that also throws a spanner in the works, because how do you start preparing for a job that you've never heard of or don't know anything about?
I think that is true to some extent. I think a lot of those jobs are very technological in nature, so it's never going to be a bad idea to skill yourself up in that area. I also think there's a lot more emphasis nowadays on soft skills. So if you've got the kind of skills where you can work with people, where you can empathize with people, where you have confidence, those are the type of skills that are going to carry you through in any kind of a work environment, because a lot more corporates now are looking at, interactive type of roles where you can work cross-functionally. So it's a lot about those emotional intelligent qualities that you're not going to be able to just learn in a course, that you're going to need to develop. And that type of development takes a lot of introspection and work on self.
That's also where the shadowing comes in.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you can go into a work environment. My husband had somebody shadow him not so long ago, and the guy, it wasn't what he thought it was going to be. He thought, architecture is just beautiful, big, skyscrapers, and he was designing warehouses, so it wasn't so glamorous. And he was like, this it, So I think, trying to expose yourself to what's out there and sitting for a full day with somebody, interviewing them, seeing what they do, seeing what the environment's like, and you get a pretty good sense of what you're going to be in for. Because otherwise you're just going in there with your eyes closed, which is a very risky thing to do.
Very true. And I think, the message, that I think that's important to take out of today is not only just for the younger kids, that is struggling with their career choices, but also that the discovery process, it's never too late to start that process. I mean, I've worked with so many clients, especially this year, in their late 50s, 60s, that only now, decide to actually follow their passion, start their own business, to really discover themselves and start new careers. Because, you're still young. That's what I believe, so you start a new career later in your life, and that's okay. I always say that, being stuck is an illusion that you create for yourself, because you get stuck. I like the thing that you said, the golden handcuff. That makes so much sense, that you think that you're stuck, but you can start the process now.
And, sometimes it doesn't have to be as drastic as moving from one type of career to a completely different career. Sometimes it's just trying to work on yourself so that you can enjoy your work more. So whether that means developing your skill set or just developing yourself. And there's a very nice tool called the Enneagram, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. And that is such a powerful tool, because not only does it highlight your own blind spots and how you show up in the workplace, it also helps you to understand and empathize with others that you work with. Because quite often the friction or the frustration at work is the people there that just work on everyone's nerves. And if we can learn to actually work better with others, and how we, show up at work, and how we are when we are in conflict or in under pressure, and how we can actually just overcome some of those things, be it with coaching or be it with just a mentor or something like that, it can actually improve your experience at work.
Absolutely. I believe that. Mary,
So
did you have a final question?
yeah, so it's about taking responsibility for self and for empowering yourself, investing time and investing money in yourself to discover what your true passion is and what you're meant to do in this world, and also to have that willingness to be open and to listen and to wonder and to explore and take a note of what makes you feel good. If you feel inspired about something, then that's something that you can put down on your notebook as, I like doing that. And every time you find something that inspires you, you will then eventually find that this is the kind of job that will help me feel this inspiration, and then go for that. That's what
So maybe I like what you're saying there about being curious, because I think, as young people are naturally more curious. And I particularly like what you said about writing it down. So, oh, I like that. And when I was a student at UJ and I was doing my internship, they made us, for the full 6 months that we were working for a psychologist, keep a journal, and we had to every day write what we learned about ourselves, what we learned about how we were interacting with others, and what we didn't do so well. And we didn't know why we were journaling this the whole time. It had to be every day. And at the end of the 6 months, they made us write a paper of the themes that emerged from the 6 months, because typically a lot of the same things came up. Like,
yes.
When a small child comes in, I find myself losing patience, or when this, so all those themes, and we start to see recurring patterns of things that we were good at, things that we struggled with. And I think, when you can actually see that and sit with it and go, okay, well, how do I then fix this? What do I keep from it? And at the end of the day, what's important when it comes to making a career for me is that authentic self-knowledge. So, the Johari window of who we think we are and how others see us and how we see ourselves, and getting to a more realistic view of that self-knowledge of who we are as a person, and then taking the knowledge of the career that we're interested in and then integrating those two. So who we are and how we understand our strengths and our development areas, and what we understand about the career and how those two might work for us or work against us as a person. So, that's the most you can really do in terms of finding the right career, especially at a young age. You don't know everything there is to know. And as Paul said, there might be careers out there that you haven't even heard of that you might find yourself in. But do the best that you can now with what you have. You can't sit around going, well, I don't know, maybe I'll find that career when I get there. It's pointless me studying now, because you have to be in motion.
Thank you so much, Melanie. I think, this topic is such a broad topic, actually. There's so many aspects, of careers that one actually could delve into. If people want to get hold of you, whether they are, teenagers, looking to find their, career that they want to study, or someone that maybe feels stuck, and want to figure out what they actually really want to do, how can people actually get hold of you?
Well, they can reach me via my website. It's Coachworks with an X at the end, .co.za. We're also on Facebook. They can reach me via email. It's info@coachworks with an X at the end, .co.za. And yes, from grade 9, as I said, we do the career choices in terms of the subjects that they're choosing. Sometimes we have grade 10s that have made a mistake, and now their parents said, without maths and science you are closing doors for yourself, so do maths and science. Then they get to grade 10, they're getting 17% for science, so actually they're closing doors for themselves, because at the end of the day you need a strong APS score to get into a university, and if you're going to have a poor APS score but you've got maths and science, it means nothing. So, and then obviously grade 11, 12, they still not 100% sure. And I even had a child earlier this week who is sure, but he still wants to confirm it. He just wants to make sure that what he's thinking actually is in line with who he is as a person, etc. And then obviously after school, I had a young girl here earlier this year who had embarked on a career in law. She went to study for 1 semester and decided she doesn't want to do it. So then she came to me, these are my other options. So, it's at different stages in life where we realize that we've either made a mistake or we need something different, or we have no idea. Some children really have no idea, but when we start working with them, suddenly the lights go on and there's one or two things that jump out, that they've really limited themselves. So yeah, they can contact me. I'm also on Instagram and LinkedIn. Or they can contact me on 083 200 8682.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed
Thanks,
our
Marika.
discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul,
Thank you.
Mary.
Thanks, Mel.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
us. And we'll
Bye.
look forward to your company in the next edition of the Coaching Hour podcast. Cheers for now.